Naxalism or the left-wing extremism had been present in the country for more than 57 years. And India took almost more than 57 years to wipe out the Naxalism. So we are moving from Red Corridor to the Naxal-free Bharat. We will talk about this in our complete episode and in this complete session. Along with me, my name is Bhanwarsingh. I'm ex-NDA 115th course and also qualified civil services in 2012. Now coming back to the topic that is there on our hand. So there were about 126 districts that were hit with the left-wing extremism in 2014. And these crunched, the numbers crunched, and in 11, we had only 11 of the districts that were there that were hit with the left-wing extremism. As per the Ministry of Home Affairs, we had only 11 of them in 2025. Now, when it comes to the drop in violence, so there had been a complete 81% drop in the violence right from the 2010 to 2024, and 85% fewer deaths were observed from 2010 to 2024 in the same period. But when it comes to the 5 decades that were there, where we were fighting with the menace of the left-wing extremism, so there had been more than 17,000 deaths that have been reported. So, of course, when it comes to the internal security, this is a very pertinent matter. We'll move into or dive into the history of the Naxalism as well. But moving forward, there had been a recent report that had been released by Ministry of Home Affairs that says that India is now free of the Naxal-affected districts, a historic first that has been in more than 57 years. In 2015, there was a national policy that was adopted and action plan was reviewed. There was a multi-pronged strategy that was adopted so that India could be Naxal-free. At the same time, there was Operation Black Forest that had eliminated Nambala Keshav Rao, or as known as Basavaraju. He was the CPIM or CPI Maoist General Secretary, and this Operation Black Forest was conducted in May 2025. At the same time, in December 2025, as per PIB report, there were only 3 most affected districts that were remaining, down from 36 that were there in 2014. And during this period, or during 2025, as per the report of the PIB, there were total 307 neutralized, the Maoists, they were neutralized in this period, in 2025 alone. On March 31st, 2026, government had this deadline that was there, that there will be complete left-wing extremism eradication, and ultimately this target had been achieved. Union Minister or Union Home Minister Amitshah, he has said or announced in the parliament that India is now Naxal-free. Now, when it comes to Naxalism, what is the story behind it? Alright, the story behind it, or how the left-wing extremism, it originated in India. So it was in 1967 that there were 3 areas that were there. The 3 areas were in the West Bengal's Darjeeling. There was Naxalbari, there was Fansi Deva, and also Koribari that were there. These were the 3 villages. And ultimately, there was a Siliguri group that was organizing a peasant protest over here. This Siliguri group was led by Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sanyal, and Jangal Santhal. They were members of the CPI Marxist. In the peasant revolt that was there, they sought to implement Mao Zedong's model of protracted people's war to overthrow the Indian state. And there were jotedars in these region, in the rural region. India had already achieved the independence, but still the Indian mindset was still ravaged by the colonial mindset. And the rural areas, they retained the colonial system where the landless peasants, they were exploited by these jotedars, or they were the landlords, and that led to the massive frustration over here. Now, coming to the failed land reforms, so of course we had implemented land reforms, and even at that point of time, the Congress government wanted to implement the land reforms, but at the same time, there were difficulties. And that led to the failure in the economic deprivation. These people, they were deprived economically, and also there were rural employment in the rural pockets. All right, there were unemployment, zero employment that was there in the rural region, and that created a fertile ground for the revolt. And this revolt happened exactly on which date? It was on 24th May 1967 that a policeman named Sonam Wangdi, he was killed by a group of the protesters that were there. And he was killed by arrows. And later on the next day, on the very next day, 25th of May, the police, it went to Prasad Jote village and opened fire. And in this fire, there were 8 women and 2 children that were, they were killed. And this is where this gets the name. The left-wing extremism, it gets the name because this complete revolt, it started from Naxalbari, and that is why it is called as Naxalism in India. So this is a complete background that in the 1967 Naxalbari uprising was there in West Bengal, and the peasant revolt was led by Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sanyal and Jangal Santhal. In 1969, the CPI Marxist-Leninist was formed. This was a formal ideological platform for the Naxalite violence. Later on, after the death of the Majumdar in 1972, there was temporary fragmentation within the faction. And that led to the People's War Group, PWG. It had revived this movement. Slowly the movement had died, but in 1980, this movement was revived by PWG or People's War Group. In 2004, the People's War Group along with Maoist Communist Center or MCC, they merged and they formed the CPI Maoist. This is the banned organization, and this was the complete time period where the Naxalism was at its peak strength. Later on in 2009, Operation Green Hunt was launched. It was the first large-scale anti-Naxal offensive that was launched in India. In 2015, there was National Policy and Action Plan that was approved, where a comprehensive holistic strategy was adopted. And in 2026, we have declared India Naxal-free. All right. Now, when it comes to the numbers, these are some of the numbers that you can remember when it comes to Naxalism, and it is important not just only for your GS paper 3 and for GS paper 2 as well. It is important for your mains essay as well. All right, it was the 1967 when the left-wing extremism that originated in India. And when it comes to the peak was in 2004, and total maximum violence of the incidents that were reported, that was in 2010, where the maximum violence incidents were 1,936. When it comes to the number of districts, so the incidents in 2024, they were down from 1,936 to 374. Almost in 2024, the drop was 81%, and the peak deaths were in also 2010. There were 1,005 deaths that were reported from the Naxal Hind region, and the deaths in the 2024 also dropped to 85%. There were just 850 deaths. When it comes to the left-wing extremist districts, so there was drop in these districts as well, which were 126 in 2014, and they dropped to just 11 in 2025. And the most affected districts also dropped from 36 to 3 in 2025. There were total lives that were lost in more than 5 decades, more than 17,000. And when it comes to the deaths between 2004 to 2023, as per the PIB report, it was 8,863. Also, there were Naxals who were neutralized in 2025, total 317, and near about 2,000 of them, they have surrendered in 2025 itself. Now, when it comes to the Naxal corridor, so this was the complete corridor that was hit with the left-wing extremism or Naxalism, and that is why this is called as red corridor. All right, there are the new areas of the Maoist expansion as well that you can see on the map or in the map itself. And right now, when it comes to the red terror, so it has shrunk. We had a complete east region that was marked with the Naxal affected areas, but now we have just 7 Naxal affected districts which are there in 2026. So this is a decade-long push that have cut the Naxal affected districts by 96% in India. Now, there are certain root causes which led to the emergence of Naxalism in India. The main and the primary root cause was the socio-economic marginalization of the tribals. All right, there were failure to implement to the Forest Rights Act, even 2026, and even the PESA or Panchayati Raj extension to the Scheduled Areas Act 1996 effectively. At the same time, they were displaced. The tribals, they were displaced because of the mining projects, because of the industrial projects from their land. And also there was, or that led to alienation, and there was susceptibility to the Naxal recruitment because of they have lost their tribal, livelihood and even the lands that were there. So they were very much susceptible to the employment by the Naxalites or the recruitment by the Naxalites, the youth were very vulnerable. All right, they were the primary target for the recruitment, especially the youth that were there with the low literacy rate. And when it comes to the human rights, all right, when it comes to the human rights, the complete scenario of Naxalism, that creates a paradox. Because the left-wing extremism that have claimed to champion the tribal rights, but at the same time, they were killing the tribals. The tribals were the primary victim because they were labeled as the police informers and then they were killed. So the same left-wing extremism that was meant to, or it was, it was supposed to protect them, that ultimately became the killer of them as well. Now, there had been a positive shift when it comes to the left-wing extremism in India. Eklavya model residential schools have been opened so that the youth, the tribal youth, they can be imparted functional, education. And there are total 178 of Eklavya model residential schools that are there in the left-wing extremist areas. There is also total 48 of the ITIs which have been opened for the purpose of imparting the skill development, and also the banking access had been given to these tribals so that there is a complete transformation of the social fabric in the region. So these are the major causes that led and that have helped the Naxalism to grow in India. Now, when it comes to the constitutional angle, we have Article 355 that lays down that it is the duty of the Union to protect every state from any kind of internal disturbance. The left-wing extremism directly tests this provision of Article 355. When it comes to the law and order, so there was a federal challenge in front of the state or in front of India that when it comes to law and order, that is a state subject. All right. At the same time, it is given under the 7th schedule in list 2, and the central forces, they needed the state consent, and there were coordination friction among the states and the center that led to the failure of eradicating the Naxalism in the earlier time period. Now, what had happened is, or what has happened right now, that now we have declared India as Naxal-free. And over here, there is a vacuum that had been created. After these security forces, they clear the area. If the administration, it will fail to deliver the services. So there is a risk that there will be re-Naxalization that we have to monitor, and also we should work forward so that re-Naxalization does not happen in the regions which had been free from the Naxalism. When it comes to the left-wing extremism, it has killed the elected panchayat representatives as well. So over here, this has discouraged the voting, and there has to be a proper, institutional building that has to take place in these regions. This had been a direct attack or assault on the participative democracy in India when it comes to Naxalism. Now, Samadhan strategy had been adopted. I'll be talking about Samadhan strategy, what this doctrine means. Samadhan is a holistic approach that had been, used by the government to eradicate Naxalism or left-wing extremism in India. The Samadhan stands for smart leadership. Then A stands for aggressive strategy. M stands for motivation and training. A is for, again, actionable intelligence. D for dashboard-based KPIs and KRAs. H for harnessing technology, and A for action plan per theatre, and N for no access to financing. So when it comes to financing, what had happened that the NIA itself had total 108 cases which were probed, and 87 of them were charge sheeted. All right, there was a surrender policy as well, where for the high rank 5 lakh rupees were provided, for the middle rank 2.5 lakh, and there was a provision of 10,000 rupees per month stipend that was started over here. There was also financial choking, where what happened was the NIA, it has freezed the assets of up to or more than 40 crore rupees. At the same time, ED has seized the assets of about 12 crore rupees, and the states themselves have seized the assets of about more than 40 crore rupees when it comes to the left-wing extremist, assets. And when it comes to the civic action plan, there had been total 196 crore rupees that had been released to CAPFs for the community outreach as well. The major operations that were planned for ending the era of left-wing extremism in India are Operation Black Forest, in which the CPI Maoist General Secretary had been killed, Operation Octopus, that was in Jharkhand in Buda Pahad, then Operation Double Kill, that was in Kolhan Forest area, Operation Chakrabandha in Bihar, Operation Green Hunt between 2009 to 2010. It was a major first offensive that was launched in India, and Cobra battalions, Greyhounds, they were the elite forces that were, that were trained to specifically, counter the guerrilla warfare tactics that are used or that were used by the Naxalism. And Bastaria battalion is very important over here, where this battalion had been raised with inculcating or with including or recruiting the tribal youths. There were total 1,143 tribal youths that were recruited, and a Bastaria battalion had been formed from these tribal youths. Now, over here, it is very important that this is a complete scenario where we must progress tactically. All right, or the complete progression had been tactical, where there was complete clear ideology or the clear, things that were marked. And when it comes to the clear, that was, clearing the strongholds, or the security operations were planned, where the intelligence-led kinetic offensives were launched by the CAPFs, especially by the CRPF and the Cobra battalion and specialized state units to neutralize the armed forces or the cadres and dismantle the safe havens for the left-wing extremism. There is the hold as well, where there is the establishing of the governance, immediate filling the security vacuum by establishing the forward operating bases. Forward operating bases were established and fortified the police stations in the erstwhile strongholds so that they can handle if there is any resurgence of the Naxalism. And even there had been building of the various socio-economic parameters, or you can say the socio-economic transition that is going on in these regions, where there had been rapid deployment of the physical infrastructure. Like, for example, mobile towers had been constructed or they had been erected in these regions so that telecom facilities can be provided to them, a proper robust communication model can be provided to them, digital connectivity can be provided to them, and even human capital initiatives like access to banking had been given so that permanently there could be prevention of the resurgence in these areas. Now, what are the things that have worked in the favor of neutralizing or eradicating Naxalism in India? So when it comes to the national policy of 2015, that was a holistic framework which had unified response, and that has led to a positive framework when it comes to the left-wing extremism in India. At the same time, there had been CAPF surge and Operation Black Forest as well, and that had a very important, irreversible strategic blow that was, that was there on the Naxalite forces that were there in the country. At the same time, when it comes to the infrastructure, the government has pushed for the infrastructure in these regions because they were socially and economically backward region, and there had been total 14,618 kilometers of roads that had been developed, and also there are more than 7,700 of the towers, mobile towers, which were erected in the region so that the connectivity, when it comes to telecom connectivity, that could be provided. At the same time, there was surrender policy that was, announced, and that had led to lots of Maoists as well as the Naxalites who have surrendered themselves. Also, there had been a NIA vertical where rapid prosecution was done, and that had weakened the cadre morale. Aspirational district program was launched where development-based approach was taken up for addressing the root cause for the underdevelopment of these districts. And also the Bastaria battalion was a major setback for the Naxalites, because over here the local tribal youth, they were used as a security force, and that have worked for the trust building, and it had weakened the base of the Naxalism in India. Now, when it comes to the concerns, what are these concerns that we have right now in front of us? So, it is when we have come to the declaration of the Naxal-free. So, it is quite premature right now because there is the urban Naxalism that still thrives. All right, urban Naxalism that is moving ahead because of the elites that are there who are living in the urban cities, and through the mindset, through the ideology changes, this urban Naxalism still thrives, and that is again one of the important things that the government needs to look after. Also, when it comes to the Forest Rights Act 2026, it is still under implemented. Alright, so it is the very important right now that we must implement the Forest Rights Act 2006 religiously, and ultimately otherwise what will happen is that the displacement will continue and there will be resentment and there will be risk of re-Naxalization in India. The governance delivery after security gains, it also remains quite weak. The human rights violation had been, that had been under-documented by the security forces is also a challenge or a concern that we have in front of us. And when it comes to the encounter killings, there are concerns that whether the due process had been followed or not. The mineral exploitation of the freed zone, it must not repeat the same displacement that have led to formalization or the formation of the Naxalism in India. And youth unemployment in the tribal belts, it is also again right now an underlying push factor that remains in front of us. And these youth, they should be imparted formal education, they should be imparted with the skill development, and so that they could be, they could be inculcated in the Indian economy. All right. Now, what is the way forward that we have in front of us? That is very important when you are thinking like a civil servant. All right. So this is very important when you are writing anything in your exam, that you should talk about way forward. Now, when it comes to the governance, it is the immediate delivery of the services that is required so that the vacuum that had been created, all right, that is filled up. The governance surges must be, or they must follow the security surges with the clear timelines that should be provided to these tribals. At the same time, there should be full implementation of the PISA Act, that is Panchayati Raj extension to the Scheduled Area Act 1996 and the Forest Rights Act 2006, so that we can address the root cause. That is, the accountability could be there for the Gram Sabha rights, and the Gram Sabha could be empowered so that the mining or the clearing of the tribal land, it cannot be done without the mandatory approval of the Gram Sabhas. All right, we should also strengthen the surrender rehabilitation policy with the NGO partnership and also skill linkages so that these personnel from the Naxalite cadres, they could be again integrated with the economy and with the society, and there should be social acceptance programs as well. When it comes to the smart intelligence, we should move forward with the tech-driven intelligence, drone coverage, AI-based track or the pattern recognition to plug the intelligence gap that is there, and we should reduce the boots to grounds risk in these regions. We should structure the legal framework that is under the UAPA or the Preventive Detention Act that we have for the digital propaganda and accountability without civil liberties overreach as well. We should also, when it comes to the ecology, the mineral development in the freed zone, it must follow the FPIC, that is free, prior, informed consent, and there should be no repeat of the displacement in these regions. And last but not least, we should strengthen the Panchayati Raj institution in the tribal region or the tribal areas, the scheduled tribes and the other traditional forest dwellers act. It must be compliant when it comes to these regions, when it comes to the mining or moving ahead with any kind of the infrastructure development programs that we want in these regions. So these are some of the way forward that could be there when it comes to the Naxalism or left-wing extremism in India. Now, this is a thought to ponder upon, that a state that wins through the guns alone has not truly won. All right, it has not truly won. It has only postponed. Lasting peace comes when every tribal village has a school, a road, a bank, and a voice in the governance. So this is all in this session. Thank you very much, guys, for watching this. But at the same time, you can connect with me on my Telegram as well, on which every day we give you the Hindu analysis PDF. All right, that is uploaded every day. So for that, you can join my Telegram over here. You can just scan it, or you can search for me at @Bhanwar_StudyIQ. Also, if you are preparing for the civil services for the 2027 or for 2028, so you can join our GS Foundation Batch Resolution P2I. This is available in English, in bilingual, and even in Hindi medium. And if you want the maximum discount, then you can use the code BRSLive for maximum discount. So that would be all. I hope that now you have a complete understanding of the complete history of left-wing extremism in India. What are the things that are, or which are the root causes that led to the emergence of left-wing extremism, and also what is the way forward. So that would be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care and Jai Hind. Do take care of yourself.